Hi, I'm Preston Williams, and welcome to another edition of Jazz Talk. Today on our show, we have a very special guest, and I'm so excited to introduce him. He has been on the music scene for over 55 years and has played so many greats like McCoy Tyner, Wayne Shorter, Charles Mingus, Albert Ayler, to name a few. He is a legend, and he's here with us today. Please welcome the legendary Mr. Eric Gravatt. Welcome, brother. How you doing?
I'm fine, man. I finally got this thing hooked up.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Well, man, like I said, you've been on the scene for a long time, and you're one of my favorite drummers, and a lot of people love you. But we don't know too much about your humble beginnings. I understand that you are from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and tell us about your upbringing, man. How you got involved in music and started playing drums, Eric.
Well, I started I started playing congas.
Ah, okay.
That was my first drum, and
Uh-huh.
then the guy up the street used to let me sit in on his drums when he went for a coffee break.
Ah,
Um,
okay.
but I guess I started playing more out of the house. Well, I started on trumpet actually, but
Really?
yeah, my dog wouldn't let me practice because every time I played, he would howl.
Yeah.
So I switched to drums, and by that time I was playing it at a playground in Germantown called Pleasant Playground,
Okay.
from which I don't live too far right now.
Right, right.
Uh, but I studied with J.R. Mitchell and uh, Adnan Barakat
Okay.
and oh my gosh, I can't remember his name now. That's a shame. Um,
But I was going to say, Eric, a lot of great musicians, man, have come out of Philadelphia. I mean, I can just go through a list of, McCoy Tyner, Lee Morgan, Stanley Clark, and just so many, so many. But I heard a story, man, that you were very young, and you would sit out side of a club or something like that to hear John Coltrane play. You couldn't get in the club, but you were outside, like listening.
yeah, Mark Kramer and I used to play together. He's a piano player, and we tried to get into Pep's Cafe.
Ah,
One night we went down to hear the band, and we were too young to get into clubs, so we just hung out at the side door.
wow, wow. Did
to
you did you ever get a chance to meet Coltrane, like when he came out, or say anything to him?
No, no.
Never did. Wow. I know that must have been an incredible experience. You probably were listening to Elvin Jones just tearing it up, man.
Well, that you could hear Elvin once you got off the subway train. At that time, the door to Peps was right next to the subway stop,
Hmm.
and you could hear Elvin as soon as the train got far enough away. You could hear Elvin all the way down at the bottom of the stairs on the way up.
Wow.
It was a trip to hear him, increasing and playing as you walking up the steps.
Yeah, very powerful polyrhythmic drummer. Now,
That,
during that time period, before I guess you started playing professionally, were you playing in like local bands in the Philadelphia area? Did you hook up with guys and just you guys jam together?
yeah, I played with most of the cats that were around town. I played with uh, gee whiz, Rufus Harley,
Uh huh.
um, uh, well, all the people that are listed on my website. I can't remember them now, because of the exigencies of the moment. But it was just it was really busy time. Um, I just played with everybody that I could. You know.
Yeah, you did, man. I mean, just some of the list of names that I saw when I was just researching your background was very, very impressive. Now, I understand that I guess after you were playing professionally by the mid 60s or somewhere around in there, Miles Davis or whatever contacted you to play with him and you turned him down to follow
Oh,
Wayne.
well,
Wayne.
I didn't turn him down. Actually, Miles contacted me to go to Japan.
Uh-huh.
Uh, and that was during the time when everybody's passport was in jeopardy because of something that had happened on the road. I'm not sure what it was, but
Yeah.
In any event, somebody's passport was turned down, so the band couldn't go.
Wow.
So I didn't hear from him again until about maybe 2 or 3 years later. I was at a club in Washington D.C.
Hmm.
And the club owner called me by name, and Miles heard my name, and he introduced himself to me, and we talked for a while. But
Wow.
I met Miroslav from Weather Report
Oh
here
yeah.
when I was playing with Michael. Um, Gee whiz.
You talking about the bass player?
No, yeah, I met I'm talking about the bass player, but I'm talking about the saxophone player, Brecker, Michael Brecker. I
Oh,
played with
Michael Brecker. Okay.
played with
Yeah. Yeah.
Michael Brecker at his house with Randy, and I met Miroslav the first night that he was in town, because he had just gotten in town from, he was actually a swimmer,
Swimmer.
and
Okay.
he sought a, what do you call it, haven here, because of the Cannonball's brother and Mike and Randy recommended him for a passport.
I got you.
So he defected from Czechoslovakia at that time. They were still under communist rule.
Interesting.
I met him actually the second night he was in town.
Wow. So you I guess when you talked to Miles, was this like right after he had made Bitches Brew?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
That was '69 and came out in 1970.
yeah, yeah.
So how did you get into Weather Report? You just mentioned Miroslav. Were you following Wayne Shorter, or did you have a relationship with Wayne at the time? Or had you
No,
guys known each
no.
other?
I was I had spent the year before that playing with McCoy, because we went on the road with
Man.
Myers Lancaster and Herbie Lewis.
Wow.
We had been working at Slugs Cafe. I don't know whether you
Gotcha.
know about
Yeah.
that, but he had all kinds of guys would sit in with McCoy at Slugs. Like for a while we had Woody Shaw, we had
Woody Shaw. Wow.
um, we had Charles Tolliver,
Charles Tolliver.
we
Yeah.
had Giuseppe Logan, Marzette Watts. They were just lined up to sit in with McCoy at Slugs. So.
And what was it like playing with McCoy? Because he's so powerful. When I looked at his background, they said that McCoy is the most influential pianist of the last 60 years. Some people put him like as the greatest of all time, because I heard drummer Joe Chambers said, he said, you listen to that band with Coltrane. He said, everybody thought that Elvin was driving it. He says, no, it was McCoy that was driving that band.
That may be the case, but playing with him was the best part of my career. I think that's what led me to play with Weather Report, because Alphonse was playing with him for a while.
That's right.
But I understand.
Yeah, the late drummer.
I understand that the subterfuge that one of the members of Weather Report was involved in all the time.
Yeah.
He set it up so that I would be available to play if the account that they gave Alphonse wasn't good enough.
Right.
Alphonse turned him down, so we crisscrossed.
Wow.
So I came to play with Weather Report because of that, because Alphonse was turned down the job that they had.
Man, and I guess the first record you did with them was it I Sing the Body Electric?
Yeah.
It was a great album, man. And this one that you did here is a personal favorite of mine. You signed the CD to have Sweet Nighter. This one kicks.
Well, that's funny, but I'm not really on that album.
Really?
No, it's Herschel Dwellingham.
Oh, man, I didn't know that, because your picture's right there. I
Yeah,
never
my picture's there, but that's not really me.
Wow. So you were just on I Sing the Body Electric, not that one. Okay.
That one and the album in Tokyo, the live album.
Tokyo, that's right. I got that one too on CD. But wow, interesting period, because you had those bands like Mahavishnu Orchestra. And I guess it started with Bitches Brew, and before that, what, Tony Williams' Lifetime, Return to Forever as well. But Weather Report, believe it or not, was one of my personal favorites. Now, I was going to ask you, you played, how'd you get to play with like Albert Eiler, man, and Mingus and guys like that? Was that before or after Weather Report?
Oh, that was well before.
Oh,
Before
wow.
the Weather Report. I played with Albert because there was I visited Byard Lancaster in his loft
Okay.
on what was it, Delancey Street or somewhere in the East Village. Oh, it was in the same building or up the street from the building where CGBG's
Okay.
is.
Okay.
And at that time, they were playing with, they would have loft bands that would play just impromptu kind of gigs, So Albert was there with his brother. A couple of other people were playing there. So I was just playing with him there. And then playing with Charles Mingus, I was there. It might have been that same week that
Wow.
I went into. I stayed at a club. I stayed at a flop house right up in the next building to the cafe. What was it? The Five Spot Cafe.
Yeah.
And as I was walking in, Danny Richmond was walking out saying, "I ain't playing another goddamn note." And I had a snare drum in a gold lame covered snare drum case.
Yeah.
And Mingus asked me, he says, "Is that your playing? Is that your drum?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Can you play 4/4?" And I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Well, hang around a while, and maybe we'll let you sit in on the last set."
Wow.
And so I played that last set with him. We played, oh my gosh, a bunch of tunes I can't remember the name of, because they were so convoluted. But yeah,
Right.
it was just one of those things, man.
Now, how'd you get to play with Jackie McLean? That's a favorite of mine.
Oh, I was when I was at Cheney State College. There was a group of guys called the Afro Brothers that set up concerts
Okay.
in Philly, and they got like Colmar Duncan and bass player. My wife's goodness name. He used to play with the Jazz Messengers.
Was it Reggie Workman?
No, not Reggie Workman. Gee whiz, this is terrible. His name's on my my website, but I can't remember it right now.
Oh, okay.
But he would. The Afro Brothers would set it up such that Curtis Fuller, Jackie Mack, all the heavyweights were coming through town, and they would have just a local trio behind
Yeah.
them. So
Yeah.
I played with them.
It was interesting, Eric, just thinking about going back to Albert Eiler. That's a shame what happened to him. They never found out what happened to him, man. His
No.
mysterious death. That was the weirdest thing.
Yeah.
They never did find that out, how his body was floating in some river or something like that. But I wanted to talk to you about Wayne Shorter. What was your perception of him? Because he's considered one of the greatest composers of the 20th century. Some of the stuff that he wrote, of course, with Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers, with Miles Davis Quintet, and of course Weather Report. What was your perception of Wayne when you worked with him?
It was a marvel to work with him, man, because he would when we get off the plane, he'd go into the motel room and turn down the TV, pull out his soprano saxophone and write music that was perfectly ready to be played.
Man.
He was such a shy individual that he, it wasn't. I didn't try to get too close to him,
Yeah. So why'd you leave Weather Report? Because you were only with them for a very short time.
Because I was asked to leave. I can't understand why that story hasn't reached out to a broader audience already.
Wow, man.
But after we recorded the Weather, what was it? Sweet Nighter. After we recorded Sweet Nighter, during that time, that's when the band fell apart. Because we rehearsed for 40 hours that week, and I went back home to DC. I was living in DC at that time, And when I got up there to the studio, nobody had called me and told me that they had three new musicians on the date. One of whom was an old friend of mine, Andrew White.
Yeah.
And so all the music that we had recorded, or we had rehearsed, was thrown out of the window. And another member of the Weather Report, whose name I won't mention, decided that we would rehearse, play a whole new book. And Herschel Dwellingham was baffled baffled away from me. So there's only a few snippets of my cymbal work
Yeah.
on the album, but again, my picture is on the album, but it's not me.
I got you, brother. I got you. Now, you still continue to play, I guess, for a while in the 70s. And I guess at some point, didn't you just leave the music scene for a while and then you eventually came back?
Yeah. Well, I went to work for the Department of Corrections in Minnesota.
Yes, sir. Okay.
And so I left that as a lieutenant. I was watch commander for a year and a half.
Yeah.
But I did a full 19 or 20 years working there.
That's incredible, man.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Now, Eric, during that time period when you left, the business, were you still practicing your drums? Were you never gave that up, did you?
No. I played every now and then with a band in Minnesota. In fact, I took a band out for a while. We played around town a lot. I had 5, 6 good players that were. We did some Coltrane work. We did some Mingus work. We did some Jackie McLean.
Yeah.
Some Monk. We had a nice, a variegated book. It was a good band, but it was in the Midwest and and in a time period when they weren't listening to that music anymore. So.
Yeah. So eventually, you hooked back up with McCoy. Did he just call you and say, "Hey, man, what you doing?"
Yeah. He called me again, and I had been retired from the prison for, let's see, a year and a half, maybe 2 years, and he called me to go back to Europe.
Wow.
And I went back with him. That was my third tour of duty with him.
That's incredible. I remember when I caught you, it was over 10 years ago when you guys it was you, Gerald Cannon, McCoy, and I believe, what's the sax player's name? I can't think of his name to save my life right now.
Gary Bartz.
Yeah. I caught you and we were chatting a little bit. And, man, it was just good to see you because, like I said, you've always been an incredible drummer. And I think I mentioned to you, you'd heard this, that Carlos Santana said Eric Gravatt was the best drummer Weather Report ever had, period. And I talked to Cindy Blackman Santana, his wife, about that. I interviewed her a couple months ago, and we were basically talking about you. They were saying the same thing, like Eric was the man, Yeah, man. I'm telling you, you got a lot of fans out there who love you, man, and just love the way you play. As a matter of fact, I was just watching, so on YouTube, some old footage of you with the Weather Report from like 1972. It's in black and white. You have an amazing solo on there that just blew my mind. I'm like, wow, it was incredible. And like I said, because like I said, I was trying to figure out. I said, man, wait a minute. I said, I see Alphonse Mousson, and I said, it doesn't seem much longer after that Eric was in there. I said, what was going on? Because y'all, I don't know, but those early recordings were great, man, and you work with so many fantastic people. Let me ask you this: as far as are you working on any projects right now? Do you have a band that you're playing with, or what's happening?
Well, given the COVID-19 pandemic, there's no place to play, and I've just relocated here. I've only been back in Philly for 2 years, and I'm just meeting the cats. But it's been kind of tricky to try and get some playing time. It's just it's that way. That's the way it is right now.
Right. Are you like writing or composing anything? You have some ideas in your head?
No, I have a bunch of ideas, but I'm not putting anything down because I mainly came back to deal with my mother-in-law. Okay. She just passed in October.
I'm sorry to hear that,
this past year, and as a result of that, I have a house full of furniture. I don't have a set of drums set up.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
every room in the house is full of furniture because her furniture was still here. Plus, we had the furniture from Minnesota
Mm.
built there, and plus we had furniture that's in the storage.
I got you, man. I got you.
I have no place to. I have no place to play.
Well, Eric, I wanted to ask you, who were some of your influences as far as the drums, as far as drummers, who were you listening to? Who'd you like?
Elvin,
Alvin, that's
Elvin,
the name that keeps coming up, man. Alvin.
Alan Dawson,
Yeah.
Anthony Williams,
Tony was
uh,
something else.
uh, Max Roach, Rashid Ali.
Oh, yeah.
That's a funny part. The funny part about it, when Miles first asked me to come with the band, he asked me who my favorite drummer was, and I said Rashid Ali, and he said, who? I said, come on, Miles, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. But yeah, I love Rashid and I love Sonny Murray,
Yeah, Sonny Murray.
Wilfred Graves. I love their work. Yeah.
Right, right. Because I guess your peers during that time period were like Tony and Jack DeJohnette and guys like that, Alphonse Mouzon. Now, I was just going to ask you, in regard to all the artists that you've worked with, if I were to ask you, what are you most proud of when you look back at your career? Because, like I said, you played with so many great artists. Is there any particular time period or artist that sticks out in your mind, like, man, that was beautiful when I played with this person or when I did that? Any particular artist that really opened you up?
Well, it would be a toss-up between McCoy and Wayne,
Yeah.
because that first time out with McCoy, I'm just regrettably it hasn't been recorded.
Wow.
But that band was smoking.
Yeah.
That band was smoking, and we played. I mean, we that's the first time I went to Minnesota was with McCoy.
Interesting.
I was amazed because I didn't know there were that many black people there.
Wow, interesting.
We played a club. Out there, and I came to live in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
But by the time I got there, things had changed already, and it was renovated. But yeah, it was a toss up between McCoy and Wayne. But there was so much friction in Weather Report that
Yeah.
I didn't have that much time to really pick Wayne's brain. But he would cut out music that was ready to be played. I mean, it didn't have to be adjusted to any degree.
It's funny you said that, Eric. Miles Davis talked about that too, because Wayne had this book, and Wayne said that when it came time to record, Miles would just call him and says, "Bring the book."
Yeah.
And he had, like you said, he had these tunes that were just ready. But speaking of McCoy, Freddie Hubbard paid him a very interesting compliment because they were being interviewed, and McCoy and Freddie were together. The guy asked him, he says, "Man, Freddie, you play with a lot of different pianists." He said, "What's the difference between playing with someone like McCoy Tyner and Herbie Hancock?" He said, "Oh, both are great." He said, "Herbie, plays synthesizers." He said, "But when it comes to like the natural stuff," he said, "McCoy is my man." He says, "Playing with McCoy Tyner is like playing with 3 piano players."
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I remember many a night at Slugs, just being amazed at how long he could play, and with such intensity.
Mm.
It was great. I had to give my props to McCoy, because above Wayne, because it was just something playing with him, man.
Yeah, incredible.
Plus, I mean, that it was to his playing that I was most adapted, because that's what I used. I used the Coltrane records when I was playing at home when I was still living with my father.
Speaking of drummers, we just lost a great one, Jimmy Cobb. We just lost him last week.
Is Cobb gone, man? Oh, shit. See, I'm incommunicado. I don't know these things. I just found out about Alphonse Mouzon.
Yeah, oh yeah, he's been gone for like a few years now.
Yeah, but Cobb. But
just lost him. He was 91, and I just saw him, Eric. I just saw him in January, And he signed some albums for me before, but I brought my copy of Kind of Blue, and he's like, of course, the only surviving member. He signed it for me, but I could tell that he played well, but I could tell he wasn't real well then. And 91 years old, man. It was like
Roy Haynes is still out there.
Look, Eric, I was just with Roy the latter part of last year, 95 years old, still killing it. And his son was there. And as I was sitting there, Buster Williams came walking in. But yeah, Roy is amazing. 95. I mean, just incredible. I don't even know what to say about that. He needs to write a biography because that guy, his resume as far as the people that he's played with, from Lester Young to Billie Holiday, Coltrane, Charlie Parker. I mean, I can talk about that all day. But listen, man, I wanted to thank you so much for doing this interview. You're a treasure. You're a favorite of mine. And thank you just so much for doing the interview. Like I said, I know we had talked about it last month, but we finally got around to getting Zoom and everything right. But hang on, I'm about to close the show out. Okay. You've heard it from Eric Gravatt. And as the saying goes, if the music grooves and makes you move, it must be jazz. I'm Preston Williams with Jazz Talk signing off. Peace.
Peace.